Welcome to our weekly webinar series. We're just going to wait a few minutes here to make sure anybody who's trying to log in can log in. So we'll be back on the stage in a couple of minutes. Hi, welcome back, guys. So we'll get, I think most of the people have joined in. So as you saw, I've added the comments that today's topic is on open space technology. As part of our weekly webinar series, we offer these webinars during COVID-19 times on selected topics to build awareness of improvement methodologies and tools that we used in past. Today's topic is a tool that we have in our toolbox for the improvement situations. We use this toolbox approach. That is, if a problem calls for a specific tool, that's what we use and not try to fit a solution to a problem. So today's topic is really such a tool designed to help drive collaboration and build ideas when you're dealing with diverse and large amount of stakeholders. Carmen is going to facilitate, or he has facilitated many of these collaboration sessions with great engagement and tangible results. So he's going to talk us through today. Bit on him, he's a founder member of Analyze Improve and a senior partner. Been involved in continuous improvement for over 25 years, have global experience working directly in operations, technical, and corporate environments. And some of you may know that he's a master black belt in Lean Six Sigma. Before I hand over the stage to him, a little bit on the structure we're using. He's going to start with the presentation on the topic. During the presentation or anytime you want, you can ask questions on the question tabs that you see on the right side of your screen. Carmen and I will keep an eye on those questions and we'll facilitate them at the end. We also run as a part of the webinar a opportunity to talk face-to-face and discuss any further questions on interesting topics that one might have as a Google Meet session, which comes in after the webinar is finished. There's a link in the chat window right now. I will refresh that at the end of the webinar. Without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Carmen.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Hassan. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today for this webinar. So today we will be covering open space technology. I'll make sure you can see this wonderful book. This is an approach that was developed and outlined in this book by Harrison Owen. And although open space has been used across the world, many different countries and industries and applications, I would have to say it's still not very mainstream. Most people have either never heard of it or never used it. It's not something that's extremely popular out there. I've had the pleasure of using OpenSpace first as a client and then as a facilitator on numerous occasions. So hopefully the following video that you will see will highlight its many benefits. And as was mentioned, I will be glad to answer any of your questions at the end of the video clip. So enjoy. Hello and welcome to today's topic, Open Space Technology, also known as OST. It is a concept which was developed and captured in this wonderful book by Harrison Owen. So today we'll be looking at the following agenda, which includes what is open space technology, when and how should it be used, some of the preparations associated with it, the outcomes expected from it, and an overall summary. So what is open space technology? It can be a little confusing at first to explain it because most people think of it as just a way of setting up a workshop or a conference, but it's very different and much, much bigger than that. So first of all, it is highly participatory and self-organizing, where a usual workshop or conference is all predefined with an agenda ahead of time and almost laid out well in advance. This is organized by the participants. The attendees really guide how this is going to turn up and the topics that are going to be covered during the course of the days. Planning and convening productive problem-solving workshops and conferences is another product of what is open space technology. So the key word there being problem solving. It's all about having a reason to get together and trying to get to some solution or some action plan because of it. It's definitely something that encourages, engages people. A lot of collaboration comes out of using open space technology. It is very much different from your typical pre-planned meetings. There is some planning that gets done ahead of time, but it's not your traditional type. All of the layout and the path forward is done live with the participants in the room. It is extremely agile and very adaptive. You don't really know if this session or the days will be going one way or the other, but it will be the attendees that will decide how this turns out. It doesn't require exhaustive agreement ahead of time or any advanced scheduling. There is, of course, some scheduling that needs to be done in terms of the rooms and the layout, but for the most part, it's extremely flexible. And stakeholder driven. I mentioned that already a few times. The attendees are really driving the show, and the client and the facilitator are only there as a guide, basically. So when should it be used, or the applicability of having open space as a concept? So definitely when you have a diverse group of people and they need to deal with very complex and conflicting materials. So the more moving parts there are, the more perhaps confusion or conflicting approaches are involved, then open space is a really great technique to use to get to the end. Also very strong and powerful when nobody knows the answer. So if you truly don't know what the end is, what it looks like, and what it's how it all fits together, then you want to be able to use something like open space technology. Participation of a number of people required to deal with the question. So when you have lots of people involved, usually traditional workshops falter. But with open space, there is really no limit in terms of the number of people that are involved in addressing a situation or a problem. The flip side is you should definitely not use open space if the answer is already known. So in other words, if you have at an executive level or a senior level, you already know what you want to do, you have a path forward, you know what the pitch is, then just set up a traditional meeting or traditional conference. Don't use open space in order to build engagement when you really don't need to use that approach in this case. And two very big words and key words with open space, and that is passion and responsibility. The people will come in, should come in with passion, but will often demonstrate that passion because they get to attend and nominate topics that are true to them and that are important to them. And they end up, the people attending and the people signing up for certain topics end up taking ownership and responsibility for the quality of the work that gets done. There are some conditions of use. There has to be a real business issue if you're going to use open space technology. A good example is perhaps you have the need to achieve certain objectives or certain targets next year, and you really don't know how to get from here to there. So that would be your real business issue. There has to be a great deal of complexity. The more complex, the more moving parts and layers there are, then the better something like open space comes in. There should be lots of diversity in terms of people and points of view. The more the merrier, actually, in this type of approach. Real passion, we talked about the word passion already. Even conflict, as a lot of people know. Conflict, when managed to some extent, is very good and actually means people care. And there has to be some genuine urgency, some importance for doing this. This is not just getting together for the sake of getting together, but we're actually trying to get to an end goal. High-level preparation checklist. A lot of people do ask, well, yes, it's going to be a flexible approach, but there must be some preparation that goes with it. And there is. It's a little different than usual. For example, you need the client, especially, or the department or the group, really needs to be ready to trust the people, because the attendees, the people in the room, are really going to be leading and driving the progress in some of the ideas and development that comes about with them. The theme has to be very clear, focused, but flexible. So that example of the objectives for the following year could be the theme of the workshop, this open space technology. The invitation itself, when you send the invitation by email, not overly prescriptive. We don't want to over define what open space is about. We just want to give some of the highlights in terms of where to show up and at what time we'll be kicking off, and leave the rest very, very open so it gets introduced live during the day. There has to be a main space, usually a very large room, to sit everyone in a circle. There is a logic to it. We don't want it classroom style or auditorium style. We want it in a circle where everyone has equal value and equal weight in driving the ideas that get covered and also the results at the end of the sessions. You also need some breakout rooms, so people will end up signing up and attending different topics or different sessions during the course of the day. And there's no magic number. Usually you need at least 4 or 5 rooms. You may need more if you have a very, very large group of attendees. There is really no limit, but imagine you have hundreds or several hundreds of people. You may need more than the 5 breakout rooms to manage everyone. You also need a large unobstructed wall, and part of the reason is because the topics as they're generated by the attendees get posted on the wall, and then people get to sign up for them as well. So you do need a very large wall space to capture all this live during the session. Food and drink, we've already mentioned the word flexible a few times, so you want that to be also very flexible. Possibly something like ordered into the room in buffet style where people can eat when they're ready to eat, not necessarily at a certain time. And because of some of these moving parts with the rooms, the main room, also the circle of chairs, you may want to engage with your facility management team to make sure they understand what you need and what you'll be doing with the layout. There is a role for the facilitator. It is not a traditional role. It is extremely hands-off. So there is no advanced agenda, okay? The role of the facilitator is essentially summarized as creating and holding time and space so that people can do their work. That's the summary of what the facilitator really does during the course of the day or the days. There's an extremely flexible approach to time and space. People will do what needs to be done in order to get through the individual topics. You need to ensure that there's this circle of chairs at the very beginning and also at the very end. Participants need to identify any issue related to the task, write it down and post it on the wall so the facilitator makes sure that this goes on smoothly. And then once those issues are put up on the wall, then participants get to sign up for the session in which they want to participate. So this gets done entirely by the attendees, and even some of the confusion that comes about it, that's good, and they will work through it themselves. You will never interrupt open space with something else. They do it, and when it's over, it's over. Some of the traditional outcomes of using open space, the first one is every issue of concern to anyone will have been raised, especially if they took responsibility for doing it. So if it's something that the attendee cared about, a topic that was very, very important to them, then it will have been raised. All issues that get raised receive full discussion to the extent desired. So if it's a quick discussion, then it will end quick. And if it needs an extended amount of time, then so be it. There will also be a full report of issues and discussions that get handed back to the participants at the end of the workshop. And priorities will be set as well as action plans made. Now keep in mind, the third and fourth point are much easier to do if you have a multi-day event, for example, 2 to 3 days. But if all you have is 1 day, then traditionally you'll only be able to get through the first 2 points on the slide. So there are 4 principles in open space technology. The first one is whoever comes is the right people, meaning there are a lot of concerns that usually come up about not having the right people who showed up to a workshop or who even showed up to a breakout session. And we can and will only work with those people who show up. So don't worry on who's not there, it's who is there. Whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened. So it's basically a reminder that once something has happened, it's done. There's no element of complaining or rehashing. We go through the topic, come up with a game plan, come up with a conclusion or solution, and just move on. Whenever it starts is the right time to start. So as many people know, creative energy should not or does not run on a clock. So let it flow as it requires. And finally, when it's over, it's over. So when the issue has been exhausted, the discussion is complete, it's finished, even if you had extra time left in the session. And conversely, of course, if it's not over, then it's not over. If you need more time and it spills into what traditionally would have been the lunch period, then you stick around and you complete the discussion until it's over. There is also something called the one law, the law of 2 feet. So if you find yourself in a session that you're not engaged or you're not adding or you're not learning, then simply get up and leave. So it's very, very engaging. It's very, the spirit of being responsible for your time is a big part of open space. So the idea here is if you feel you're wasting your time or it's not the topic you thought it was going to be or it's not going the way you thought it was going to be going, then get up and leave. So that's another way of making sure that the right people are in the room producing the right product. So in summary, be prepared to be surprised by using something that is called open space technology. It is often something that frightens and worries people who have never used it before. There is a little bit of doubt that that people can actually self-organize themselves during the course of several days, especially a large group. But inevitably, people are always amazed and genuinely satisfied and happy with how things turn out and how engaged the workers and the attendees are in driving the solution to the end. Thank you very much for your time.
Hopefully you enjoyed. They're starting to pop up. Carmen, I'll just walk you through. So I think one of the questions is about, is there a real example of how it would look like? Do you have anything that you've done in past that you can share on that topic?
Yeah, there's a couple of extra slides with that slide deck. So I can actually, I'll share my screen. Hopefully this works okay. And I'll show you an example that we just recently did. You can let me know if at least you can see my screen, Awesome.
Yeah, it's there.
See it? Perfect. So yeah, so this is an example of a relatively recent, it was a few months ago that we did a open space event. And what the client wanted was a collaboration day, something they do usually anyway, once a year. For about 50 people in this case. And essentially the idea here, if you remember the presentation, there has to be a theme, and the theme in this case was improving on their operating goals. So like many companies, you have mission statement, vision statements, things like that. And in this case, they had a list of several goals that they wanted to achieve over the next years. But there wasn't actually a roadmap. There wasn't actually concrete thoughts on how to do it, right? So that was the theme of why we wanted to use open spaces. How do we improve on these operating goals? So the idea was to review what was captured as a company. And then the participants, this group of 50 people, had carte blanche. They basically could pick absolutely any topic, any goal, and come up with suggestions on how to get there, identify ways to achieve them. Of course, with any collaboration, there's other purposes, building relationships, morale, et cetera, and yeah. So in terms of the example, I kind of alluded to this in the video. So in this case, there were 5 rooms, and it was a one-day open space event. So this is what it would look like, right? So you divide the day up in this case into 3 segments, each about an hour and a half, and there were 5 rooms. And if we ignore lunch for a second, that means there's a total of 15 boxes. And you'll notice that one of the names that comes from the author is it becomes a community bulletin board. In other words, it's not my bulletin board. It's not the client's board. It's the people in the room. The community actually gets to decide how this looks like. And then you move on and how it was built. Basically, each box meant that, for instance, this is room A at 10:30 in the morning. And this box represents room C at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then it's you let them go. I know it's probably hard for you to see, but the idea is this organized chaos is an amazing part of the open space spirit. So when you're talking the bulletin board or community bulletin board, basically people get up, they put their topic and they put their name on a yellow sticky, and they just keep sticking it and sticking it actually just on a blank wall. We only actually take those stickies and put them in a time slot as a second step, because we don't want people worried about, well, what time is it going to happen? Is it in the morning, in the afternoon? It's just about generating ideas, right? And as you can see, there was a hell of a lot of ideas that were generated, a lot more than 15 time slots, right? And that's part of also the beauty of open space. People are empowered, right? It's not about the facilitator, it's about the people. So they have to decide what they want to do. Are they going to merge ideas? Are they going to eliminate ideas? It's their day. They get to decide how to do it. And then the idea of this part, this village marketplace, which is not shown in this slide, is the last step is people sign up for these sessions. So basically, if you imagine there's topics all along these lines, at 10:30 to noon, if you are a participant, you get to choose which one of these 5 you're going to attend, and you sign up for it by putting your name just underneath. So very powerful again, because if the topic is not popular or people don't think it's an important topic, they will garner very little or perhaps nobody that's interested in the actual topic. Where if it's a very, very popular topic, you could have half the group who wants to attend a certain title or certain topic. So this is a real example, and in this example, of these 15 topics, which was really interesting because even though it was just one day, I would say the bulk of the topics and the bulk of the cases, people actually came up with recommendations and an action plan that they wanted to do with their ideas. In some cases, you can't get this far. You just stop at this level of just ideas and concepts. But they were actually able to come up with an action plan on their topics. And in that one day, this is something that I did not mention in the video. It's something else that's very powerful. This was basically a 9-to-5 day. And at the end of the day, all these ideas and all these action plans were captured live. So as they were generated, they're captured. And a 45-page document was produced at the end of the day. So that document not only was available for the client, the CEO, for instance, but also each participant, they had the ability to have a copy on paper or electronic for them to take back with them live. So they didn't have to wait a week or a month to get this generated back to them. So this is a recent example, and I just wanted to show some of the looks that you get when you're actually running the open space. Okay, should be back.
Thanks, Carmen. There's another question I have. Many people tend to think they already have the only right answer, right? It's human nature. Is there a particular way to minimize their impact?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a couple of ways that have to be triggered. The first is you need, I think, Austin, you alluded to this about using the right tool. So first you have to see, is open space the right tool that you want to use? So if I see that the executive or it's usually at that level, it's usually an executive level that wants to use this kind of approach, you have to push back a little bit. If the plan is already laid out, if the path forward is already known, if I already know what I want to do, then I will not propose open space. It's the wrong tool. There's other things that you can use that make more sense, like workshops or Kaizen events, for instance. The other place to catch that is, which is a very good question, is one of the reasons that we set up the circle is exactly to do that. All the members, so you could have a CEO, a manager, an engineer, a worker, whatever, everyone's equal. And that's one of the roles the facilitator has, is to make sure that there's nothing that is off the table and there's nothing that's really sort of out of scope. So the idea of a predetermined solution can't enter into the discussion. Now, of course, anybody's allowed to put up a topic and host it and come up with their ideas, but the setup actually helps to minimize that risk.
Okay, thanks, Carmen. Just for people to know who are attending it the first time, we do also have polls as a tab there. We have some certain questions, for example, what topics that you would like to see. This is how we are basically picking these topics. So this was one of the most requested topic in past few of the webinars. Our next webinar is going to be on roadmap to sustainable improvement. And then we'll continue looking at how the polls, people are picking the topics, and then keep organizing those. I don't see any other questions coming in. If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we'll end the webinar part of this series, then move on to the Google Meet side of things for the people who want to have a face-to-face discussion or anything else like that. Thanks, Carmen. I think you also answered the Kaizen, which is a question I get asked the most, right? We do a lot of collaboration work in Kaizens. We do a lot of collaboration change management piece that actually has to happen in every project we do. So, how is that different? I think you kind of touched it. The role of the facilitator is an interesting one. You talked about, what you can still enable, but it is a bit different than what I would do in a Kaizen, for example. In Kaizen, I am encouraging a path forward, right? Because we have a methodology. You want to talk about
definitely for those of you familiar with Kaizen, or for those of you not, it's more of an organized multi-day session. In the Kaizen event, you have a very specific purpose. There's something tangible that you can put your hands around, and you're looking for a solution, right? And the facilitator is very active. You're at the front of the room a lot. You're guiding the process day to day. And open space, besides the kickoff, so the kickoff, there is that opening half hour. I have to pull away from the room. I'm in the room, but I pull away from the center stage. And it's one of the amazing things is people are so used to having an active facilitator. They're always looking at you, right? They're always like, well, my idea and his idea are almost the same. What should I do? And my role, obviously based on the premises, is not to answer that question. We're trying to encourage the participants to actually come up with their own solution, right? So they're gonna look at me and I go, yeah, good question. Well, what would you do, right? And then the ball starts rolling, and then they quickly understand that, right, I get to drive the show, I get to make the decisions going forward.
Yeah, and that's where obviously the powerful part of this is.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Carmen.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll go to the Google Meet for those who want to chat. Thanks again.
Thank you.